as a self-custody trading app exchange, is that not only do we connect to like DEXs and CeFi swap exchanges, but we also have very, very rich fiat on and off ramp support. And so that is another piece that we'll be slowly adding Cardano to, because as we add a new asset, we then have to go to each one of the fiat providers and match up the asset with what they support. And many of them do support Cardano. And so making that much more broad support is one of the things that we're looking at doing.
What's up, Ada Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here, Fareed. Today, we're diving into a brand new wallet, which is adding support for the Cardano ecosystem. Now, it's dubbed the Edge Wallet, and I'm going to be sitting down with their founder, Paul Puey. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring up the man himself. Paul, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, definitely excited about the integration. It's a long time coming, and happy to chat about what we've done and also what we plan to do within this ecosystem.
So before we dive into what Edge Wallet is and all of its features and all of its abilities, could we maybe hear a little bit about you, where you've come from, and what has sort of gotten you into the space?
Yeah, so I definitely have a technical background. Went to school over in Berkeley. Electrical engineering, computer science is what I had studied, and then I'd worked almost a decade in Silicon Valley, specifically at NVIDIA. And so I felt fortunate that I was surrounded by some of the brightest minds in the technical space working at that company, and I liked that. Unlike a lot of fields, a lot of software fields that I was in, at NVIDIA, you're surrounded by people that really wanted to solve hard problems. And I think those hard problems were in 3D graphics and performance of 3D graphics. At the time, there was barely any talk of AI, just a little bit. At the time I had left, just a tiny bit of talk of AI, but it was all about 3D modeling, 3D graphics, gaming, how to make things look more beautiful, how do you make things faster, and really push those type of limits. I did leave for health reasons actually for about 10 years and left technology altogether. I worked in small business, and that really opened my eyes to how people outside of tech interface with technology, the user experience that they deal with, and did that for about 10 years and then discovered Bitcoin. Discovered Bitcoin back in 2013. And admittedly, I just went fully down the rabbit hole. I was not one of those people that, I picked up the white paper. That looks interesting. And then put it away for a couple of years. It completely fascinated me from both the technical level and the ideological level, and the financial level as well. All of those were fascinating to me. And after using the technology, for anyone listening that dates back to the 2013-14 era, you'll probably know that using self-custody was far from simple. And so I felt like that was an opportunity to enter the space and simplify it and use kind of my experience outside of tech, meaning to being a core business owner and user of financial tools, take that experience, apply it with my technical background, and create a product that bridges that gap between the old and the new being the crypto world, the old being what people are accustomed to in the web, what is now called the Web 2 space. Ironically, back then we didn't call it Web 2, we just call it the internet. And so founded Edge, which at the time was called Airbits. And so we're actually not a very new project. We're new to Cardano, but the company's been around for about 10 years. But a good chunk of that was building a prior app under a prior company named Airbits, which was focused on payments. And while I really, really want to see the world using crypto for payments and just, transfer of value, means of exchange, right now it's still by and large a speculative asset with a little bit of utility. And so in 2018, 2019, we had pivoted to create a new app, rebrand the company as what you see now as Edge, which is a multi-asset exchange. So that's kind of my background, and a lot of the ethos that I had entered into the space with is what I want to try to bring to pretty much as many people as possible.
So it sounds like I'm speaking with a big Bitcoin whale here.
No.
Really interesting.
Admittedly, I put so much. I mean, when you go years creating a startup and not getting paid, you end up burning a lot of your Bitcoin. So I have no regrets and whatnot, but I definitely have a small fraction of what I started with, and a huge multiple of the knowledge and connections and the people that I had when I first entered. So you kind of trade one for the other and have no regrets. But yeah, I'm definitely not a whale by any stretch.
Yeah, no, it's always interesting to listen to how people have come into the space. And it sounds like you were already pretty tech heavy integrated before making the switch over into Bitcoin, and all of that makes sense. And you really hit something there that I want to just sort of reiterate, which was the importance of self custody, right? Which is, again, I think is where Edge Wallet kind of falls into. A lot of people that come into the space, especially when they're early, when they're not mature, they're looking for the easiest way, to take custody of their assets, right? So you have platforms, for example, like Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, et cetera, where they're basically the custodians of your assets. And for a lot of people, they're okay with that. They don't understand the potential implications, of that sort of approach. But I think the deeper you go into it, the more you kind of hang around the space, you really begin to understand some of the core principles as to why we're here in the first place. And I
Mhm.
think going with a self custody or a non custodial wallet is a must as you mature and as you age in the space. So I think that's a good sort of segue into the Edge wallet. For
Mhm.
anybody who hasn't heard of Edge, you've kind of given us a little bit of an overview, but do you mind maybe highlighting, what features are available, what networks are supported, and then we'll dive into the recent support for Cardano.
Yeah, so Edge is once again self custody. We try to almost like avoid the term wallet per se, mainly because that doesn't really define what features you get in the application because there's so many different kinds of wallets, but you can call it a wallet. But really, it's a self custody exchange trading app. However you want to call it, lets you buy, sell, and trade dozens, if not hundreds, of different assets, dozens of chains, hundreds of different assets. Specifically with tokens. And its big differentiator is the ease of security. That's probably the best way to describe it. If you look at most self custody apps, if you've been in the space for a few years, you've already gotten accustomed to it. It's nothing new for you to have to write down 24 words, 12 or 24 words to back up your money. And think about that. That is a very bizarre concept. Take a normie, a no coiner, whatever you want to call them, crypto noob, and say you got to make sure to back up your money. No one in the world has ever had to back up their money. This is the first time ever that they've ever had that concept. Even if you back up the password to your online banking, that is not backing up your money, right? That's just a password. Access to your money is made through other means in addition to online banking. And so what Edge has done is create what is kind of the Web 2 interface to be able to access self-custody within the crypto space. So we want to feel like a Kraken, a Coinbase, but give people, by and large, the core benefits of self-custody. We have real, actual private keys that are created client-side in the user's device. We don't see them. Edge never sees them, but a user simply creates an account. And with that encrypted account, the keys and all data of the app are automatically encrypted. They're automatically backed up. And if you have multiple devices, they're synchronized. There's automatic, what's called IP validation. Think of it as a light form of two-factor authentication that automatically protects your account. At the touch of a button, you can enable full two-factor authentication. No need for a Google Authenticator app or SMS or email. Privacy is a big part of our ethos. And so some people get into crypto for privacy. And you do hear that if you want privacy, you have to use self-custody. That's by and large incredibly true. But what's not true is that using self-custody gets you privacy. All right. So one is required for the other, but the other doesn't automatically give you, one. So privacy must use self-custody. Self-custody doesn't guarantee privacy. So what we do in the self-custody space is try to really give the highest level of privacy possible, which is why we don't collect personal info like email and phone number for logins. So if you log in, they don't use an email. Completely chosen username, just simply a username. It's a handle. It's whatever you want. You don't share it with anyone else. You don't have to. Um, and that's what effectively logs in and creates this encrypted account that that client-side app can then put keys into. And not only do we put keys into that encrypted bucket, we also put everything in the app, all the settings and metadata. We let you tag transactions like a mini Quicken or QuickBooks, and all of those, that transaction tagging and metadata is all encrypted alongside with the keys. So there's no information leak. It's about as pure client-side privacy as you can really get in almost any application. And we're open source to prove it too. And I think this is something that's really left the entire crypto space. It was such a strong ethos when I got in. I don't think you could actually download a closed source wallet when I got involved with Bitcoin. There was no such thing. And then really the fight was, well, how open source are you? The different levels of open source. And so I think we're probably one of the last ones left in the industry, and as far as multi-asset, being a multi-asset app that gives people full control, self-custody, and is also open source. You can download the source code, build it yourself, run Edge yourself if you wanted to. It may have limited functionality if you did that, because you may need API keys to access various services to, access the blockchain and whatnot. But you could get those keys, put them into the app, and actually have a fully functioning version of Edge that you built yourself. So that's kind of a bit of an overview. That key management, as I'd mentioned, is a really strong part of what we aim to achieve. A subjective differentiators. We think we're an absolutely beautiful app. We've had really positive comments on the look and the feel of Edge. We just went through a major update. We call it like our 4.0 update. Just went live early this year. And I think we're on par with some of the most well-designed apps in the industry, which you don't see in general in open source. Usually these are the giant, tens of millions of dollar VC funded companies that can hire design firms that Apple would hire, and fully closed source, trying to protect their IP. But no, I think we've been able to achieve the best of both worlds: good design, great user experience, ease of use, and be open source and private at the same time.
You have just knocked out a couple of the questions that I already had laid out here. Very, very great overview of Edge. You touched on security and open source. Those are two of the biggest things when it comes to crypto wallet, right? It's one thing to use a wallet that looks great, that feels great, but if it's not open source, you're not sure about where information is being, copied, sent, etc. But then also from a security standpoint as well, it's very risky. And so to hear that you guys have taken what is essentially the initial, I think back of, like you mentioned, when Bitcoin and all these things were founded, decentralization, openness, those were the core concepts. You guys have stuck with those, and a lot of wallets have sort of strayed away from that. Again, I think for ease of use, for a sleeker interface, maybe faster integrations or faster implementations of future upgrades, whatever the case is, they've stepped away from that for one reason or another, right? So to see that you guys have stuck to that, I think is relatively impressive. And then you even also added that you guys are more than just a quote unquote wallet. You guys provide a suite of additional features, right, to where you guys can be the one-stop shop for anything crypto. So it's really reassuring and very interesting to hear that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we are a product with a suite of functionality. When I hear that term one-stop shop, I kind of pause a little bit for it, because we're not a one-stop shop. There's things that we don't do. And I think this is a thing that, your listeners should ask themselves when looking at the suite of products out there in crypto, is that there's no one product that's going to do everything, and definitely no one product that's going to do everything well. So hence the term wallet is such a poor term, because it's been taken by the crypto industry to assume that it can kind of do everything. It can be your key signing app for dApps. It can be your vault. It can be your app to do swaps and exchanges. It can be your app for staking, NFTs, you name it. And we try, and you're also your app for payments, like what our original app Airbits was. And you realize that it's really difficult to design an app that can do everything. So I think one-stop shop is actually a very dangerous thing. Apps shouldn't try to be a one-stop shop, because you'll just end up being a one-stop shop. You'll be like the dollar store, right? A bunch of junk, as opposed to a lot of high-quality products. And so where we focus on in Edge is the exchange and general financial services, right? What are the higher level financial services that people are looking for above just payments? So we're not focused on payments. We don't have a great UI that enables people to go and pay at a merchant, buy a coffee, things like that. People can use it for that, but it's not focused on that. And there's some other apps that support fewer assets that are focused around that. And that's fair. We accept what we're not so good at. As well, we don't support NFTs, right? And for us, the mix of financial and visual art, music, and whatnot, or ticketing, which I know some NFTs, are utilized for that, is a bit of an odd mix, and it creates for a convoluted, UI. I really like some of the apps that have been launched out that let you use NFTs for ticketing, and they're very focused at that. You launch the app, and boom, you got the QR code for the ticket that's coming up next, kind of like your Apple Wallet, and scan a QR code, you're in. That is so focused around a specific use that there's no way you could beat that with an app that gives you prices, up and down charts, graphs, buy, trade, stake, all. You can't, right? And so that's the thing I want to harp on into our industry, is to have focus, have apps that have focus. We'll have less overlap. In a way, we'll have, to some degree, a bit less competition, or at least foreseen competition between certain apps that are focused on different things. But since everyone calls everything a wallet, they'll think, oh, is they your competitor or whatnot? No, they do something different. They're a payments focused app, or an exchange focused app. They're an NFT focused app. So sorry for that little digression. It's something that's been crossing my mind quite a lot in this industry and space, and something that we've been trying to, I thought we've been utilizing to carve out what we do as a company. So that's my opinion on it. But of course, I'd love to hear, other people's take on that. Feel free to obviously reach out to let Dapp Central know, let me know what you think on that topic.
Yeah, definitely no need to apologize. This is why I love having guests here on the show, right? I'm able to hear different perspectives. And as you mentioned earlier, you're a veteran in the space. So whenever you speak, I'm listening. You've been in this for quite a bit of time before even crypto. You talked about your experience in the Silicon Valley there. So I'm all ears. And I even try to tie that back into content creators' perspective. On YouTube, you were sort of encouraged to pick a niche.
Yeah,
So for myself, I focus on Cardano and I focus on blockchain and crypto. If I were to just all of a sudden begin releasing videos about gardening or home improvement, it wouldn't make any sense, right? It just
exactly.
wouldn't land with my audience. So I think you do raise a good point that when you have a product, it makes the most sense to figure out what that audience is and serve them well, as opposed to trying to serve all audiences and not being able to give everybody your full attention or your best foot forward. So really good point
Got
that you
it.
make there. Now, jumping into Cardano, could you maybe highlight what has been added in terms of support within Edge, and how that sort of came to be? Why now, and how was the process?
Gosh, the process, it was definitely a long-winded process. We've been talking with folks from Cardano Emergo, which is one of the dev shops for Cardano, since 2019, maybe as far back as 2018. So it's been quite some time. And the architecture of Cardano has made it definitely a bit challenging for us. And especially the blend of the Edge architecture and the Cardano architecture, the two combined, were a bit of a challenge. As you're aware, and I, saw some of your videos, you're aware of this UTXO architecture versus EVM, or account-based architecture, that Ethereum and many of the newer smart contract chains have. The blend of those two is a bit challenging. And so one of the things that we were looking for was a well baked out software development kit, or SDK as we call it in the tech world, that kind of fit the mold, so that it abstracted some of the complexity of the UTXO model for an application like Edge. And that was something that was in development over time. And I remember we were even looking at integrating Cardano fairly early on, before it had smart contracts. And some of the dev team said, hold on, we have a hard fork coming. And what you do today won't be compatible, post hard fork. I can't remember which hard fork it was, just know I've been in conversations. And we said, okay, we'll wait. Hard fork it came. Now the tooling needed to get rebuilt to support the new fork. And I think after that, we had fallen a little bit behind on keeping up to date with the tooling. And it was just, hey, we need to get up to date again. Let's start doing the research, start doing the study. And there's a lot of much more tooling available as of the past year. And with that research, we found some that can actually fit our model. And to give you an idea what I mean by that model, is that Edge is very client side, very, very, very client side. What does that mean to be client side? It means that most of the business logic, the code, runs on the device of the user. That is so different from the Web 2 model, where all of your business logic runs on a server, and the phone or your computer is nothing more than a display. All right. All it is a display to show you the pretty pixels, buttons, menus, drop downs, and whatnot. But it doesn't have much of the logic of the application. Edge is the polar opposite. A ton of the application's logic is on the phone, and whatever servers we have almost no logic. If there's almost no business logic, and that's needed for the privacy portion of what we're trying to deliver. If the business logic were on the server, we would know what's happening. We would know what transactions people are processing and whatnot. But we connect people right from your phone directly to the blockchain. So bringing that back as to why this was a challenge is when we want to be able to create and parse transactions for various cryptocurrencies. Sometimes the tooling available is designed a bit more heavyweight and runs on a server, right? It's easily designed to run on a server, and the developers say, "Oh, you just simply spin this server up, you connect to it, and then your wallet, for lack of a better term, can create transactions. It can sign the transaction client side, of course, because that's where you have the keys. It can query transactions off the server and parse the transaction to know what it's seeing off the server. And all of that we generally try to avoid, right? Especially the creation of transactions. We want to create those, on the phone itself. So, given some of those limitations, when we come across an architecture that requires more server-side implementation, we hold off a little bit. And at the time, that would have been what we would have had to choose, given the heavyweight nature of Cardano's UTXO model. That does not. UTXOs are hard in general. Just to give you an idea, most wallets outside of Edge, to deal with UTXOs, deal with them entirely on a server. And what they do is they simply send an address over to a server and say, give me everything I need about this address. And not only that, because most UTXO coins, such as Bitcoin, have many addresses, what they do is they send a piece of data called an XPub. Is that something new for your listeners, the concept of an XPub? All right, so an XPub is this cryptographic key. When you give it to someone, they can derive every address that you'll ever have for that chain. Not just what you've currently used, but all the ones you will ever use for that specific wallet. Now that's very efficient for an app because I just have to give one little piece of data and everything comes back to me from that one little piece of data, as opposed to what does the user specifically need to know? What are their specific addresses, and query just those? It's a bit more heavyweight, but it's more private. It doesn't give another entity information about every address that you'll ever have. So the UTXO model is hard, but we did build it, and we built it for Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. And we initially said, oh, let's apply that to Cardano. Unfortunately, the code for our UTXO model was completely incompatible with Cardano because it uses, while it's UTXO, it doesn't have the same transaction format, right? The data is just different enough. So those challenges, I think, were why we definitely took a little bit longer, but it's definitely an asset that we've been wanting to add. One of my co-founders is a big fan of Charles Hoskinson and Cardano. You go over his place and he's got a 70-inch TV playing, YouTube reels of Hoskinson, and so we knew it was an asset that obviously achieved the mind's eye of a lot of the crypto ecosystem. I appreciated in a way, a lot of crypto is an experiment. And I appreciate this experiment. Can we do, smart contracts in a UTXO model? Let's try it. I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I like that it's being tried, and we want to support that effort and see if that becomes the model for the future. So it's a challenge, but crypto's not easy. So we finally were able to take on that challenge and get it delivered. And that's what we have today. I think I didn't fully answer your question. What do we have in Edge? We do have the ability to send and receive and swap Cardano on some CeFi exchanges. That's our starting point. We'll build on that in the future.
Yeah, I feel like I am I'm getting taught here in class. You've done an amazing job of explaining, the client side interaction, server side interaction, explaining the XPub, and really bringing a lot of information here, Paul. I'd love to have you back on the channel to maybe even just walk through the actual wallet in real time to give the viewers a better idea
Yeah.
of what it's capable of handling. you guys, as you mentioned, could have gotten this done probably a little bit faster had you guys been relying on more server side interactions as opposed to things being a little bit more secure, but being done on the client side of the spectrum, right? So I value that, and I'm thankful that, even though it's taken a little bit longer than expected, it's been done the right way with the end user security as the main priority. So to that end, what's next? Can we expect to see support for Cardano native assets? Maybe even going down a level deeper into the rabbit hole. Could we see potential, integrations with specific protocols running directly on Cardano, which will, have some sort of partnership or collaboration with Edge? What's next for the adoption with ADA?
Got it. So if you look at the existing product and our product definition as a financial services app, in a way, well, I won't say financial service because we're not a financial services company, right? Crypto is more of a decentralized replacement for financial services. So what are those financial services that we're replacing in crypto? Obviously, sending and receiving, that we've got covered. Exchange functionality right now that goes through some CeFi exchanges, that we have covered. And then DEX functionality. So that would be one of the kind of low-hanging fruit pieces of support that we'd like to have, because we do believe that exchanges should be migrating, people should be migrating to using DEXs. And we do that as seamlessly as possible in Edge. So people don't have to choose a DEX. They just get a DEX if that's the best price. So adding support for decentralized exchanges as they come on board to support Cardano would be a next step. And then, of course, asset support, like native asset support, tokens, so that people can get in and out of various assets that they deem valuable, or for getting assets that they want to use in other protocols. One thing we have added support for, and I'm going to be just bluntly honest, begrudgingly added support for, is the Wallet Connect protocol. It's what I call not a great fit for the definition of our app, but we're in a phase in the crypto ecosystem where the dApps, right? You're Dapp Central, so there's a bunch of dApps out in the world. Many of them are very early in their existence, and the crypto ecosystem has kind of decided that the model for initial deployment of a dApp is that the team of the dApp, whoever they are, deploys some UI interface for that dApp, and then you connect to it with your wallet, like the wallet that holds the keys. And it's not a great user experience, but it's a way for us to try a protocol, to be able to put liquidity into a protocol, to be able to utilize it until it achieves a level of adoption where that protocol then becomes kind of tier one and gets integrated directly into the apps that hold the keys. Think like an Edge, like, or a MetaMask. And we've seen this kind of ring true with things like decentralized exchanges, like a Uniswap. Uniswap, the protocol is not uniswap.com, the website. Now, they might have been built by the same team, but those are two different pieces of technology, right? And they operate independently of each other. And so when Uniswap first launched as a decentralized exchange, the pretty much only way you would access it is by going to uniswap.com, which is the UI interface for it. And then you'd have to connect your wallet, which gives it the public keys to see your balances and see, if you've provided liquidity, and then you sign with the external wallet that connected to it. Now, Uniswap is automatically baked into several apps such as Edge, such as MetaMask, maybe a few others. And now it's not this connection, wallet and dApp connection thing. It's just baked in. You just automatically have that functionality. And that's what I call a dApp that's achieved tier one status, right? You're mass adopted, you're accepted as being needed by the ecosystem. And that's what we try to focus on, is what are the financial services that are tier one status? What are the protocols that have achieved tier one status? And then build the user experience directly into Edge for those protocols, such that there's no connection needed. But in the meantime, we support Wallet Connect, all right? And similar protocols coming out to support that in the Cardano ecosystem would be a next level of support. As well, staking. This is easily the biggest thing in the Cardano ecosystem. I feel like I hadn't heard of such fervent desire for staking until Cardano came out. I feel like it was one of the chains that launched the desire to stake. It's like I want to stake my asset. I want to stake my ADA. and that we don't have support for yet, but we know how to do it. We know it's the next step in our evolution of support for Cardano. Um, and so those are a bit of an overview of what we provided, and with staking. And I think it's interesting. Our industry has redefined that word staking. Um, would start off as staking for proof of stake, for validation. But the user experience of staking for validation is really not very different from traditional financial services of literally putting money in a savings account, right? Put the money in the savings account, you earn yield. So, what are all the yield earning opportunities in our financial world? Well, you could go and put money as a market maker on an exchange and you earn yield doing that. Well, and then now we've kind of sort of called that staking as well, even though it's not. It's LP or LPing, liquidity provision. And so being able to do that on Cardano protocols would be another evolution of quote unquote staking or earning. So we do aim to add that as well. So hopefully that's a good overview of the future, where we're at today, and the kind of things that we have looked at adding for various protocols, which we'll definitely support for Cardano as well.
Yeah, that was a great summarization. It sounds like, again, you guys are at the very early stages. You provide the basic functionality, sending, receiving, etc. If you need any sort of help, which I think you probably don't, but reaching
Oh,
out to some of the top protocols here, I am more than happy to get you in touch and to get you clued in.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely reach out with any need for help, because we know we do deal with a handful of protocols, and really getting direct contact with people that are boots in the ground working on those protocols makes the process infinitely easier. Versus us digging through various website documentation. Documentation is always out of date and poorly written. We're guilty of that as well, and so yeah, being able to talk to people in this world of AI and digital communications, it's nice to just actually talk to somebody. So that help would be much, much appreciated. And yeah, we'll definitely ping.
For sure. No, I appreciate that. Paul, I want to thank you for your time as we get ready to wind things down. Anything that you think that the viewers could find benefit from as it pertains to what you're doing?
I think we've covered a vast majority of it. Probably the one thing that I didn't touch on, which is a lot of the focus of our company, and where we exceed every other product. As a self custody trading app exchange, is that not only do we connect to like Dexes and CFI swap exchanges, but we also have very, very rich fiat on and off ramp support, on and off ramp support. You might come to some of our competitors and they let purchase a little bit of Bitcoin with Apple Pay, and that kind of ends at that, right? Whereas we support payment methods all over the world, native, not just Visa, MasterCard, native payment methods in Europe, SEPA, faster payments, Australia, PayID, even parts of Asia, Canada with their EFT, I believe it's called, Mexico. And so that is another piece that we'll be slowly adding Cardano to, because as we add a new asset, we then have to go to each one of the fiat providers and match up the asset with what they support, and many of them do support Cardano. And so making that much more broad support is one of the things that we're looking at doing. So realize that when you go into Edge, we can be, I hate to say it, not the one-stop shop for everything, but at least a single app for you to be able to buy, sell, and trade, and eliminate your need to go to a fully centralized exchange, deposit fiat, trade the fiat, and then remove the fiat to something where you own your own keys. Instead, it's a single step. So not a one-stop shop, but maybe a one-step shop. Oh, I think I'll make that term now. You're a one-step shop for buy, sell, and trading. So it becomes that much simpler, in a way that much more secure, so you don't leave money on an exchange that could get compromised. So that's probably the one little nugget I didn't cover. And I would love to hear feedback from your listeners, like, hey, what are the regions they're in? What are the payment methods they'd like supported? Because I'm here in the US. I know ACH, I know Visa, MasterCard, Apple Pay, but there's so many different fiat payment methods around the world. And we'd love to hear what people are using.
Yeah, no. For the viewers, please, as Paul mentioned, if you have any sort of suggestions as to what could be supported or what you think needs to be supported, make sure to leave that down below. And as we just get ready to close things out, if anybody wants to find out more about Edge, please go ahead and check out the description down below. I'll leave the official link to their websites. Make sure to follow them on Twitter as well. A lot of information coming out. And as Paul mentioned at the very beginning, they've gone ahead and just rebranded their entire user interface. So they look very nice and sleek. Again, I'll be checking them out here in a couple of days. And I'll be following up here with more updates as it relates to Edge. For the viewers at home, if you guys found today's interview to be helpful or you just learned anything along the way, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. And if it's your first time stopping by Dapp Central and you do want more content like this, breaking down everything going on within the blockchain and crypto space, then consider subscribing. That said, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers, everybody.